Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I was thinking about designs and I realized I've never done something that looks like the dial of a compass with a north, south, east, west notifications on it. And I've seen that as a jewelry motif before, and I thought maybe I'd try one myself. I've not done that before, so let's give it a shot. I picked out a pretty flashy orange cubic zirconia that's about, I think it's 8 millimeters. So it should be an attention getter, but I think it'll be fun, and it's something I haven't done, so let's give it a shot and see how it turns out. All right, let's get started. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks. All of these, or pretty much all of them, have some useful metalsmithing information on the backs. Some of them have conversion charts. This one has different flow temperatures of types of solder. I like them because I can keep a record of what I've made, and so I can go back and revisit those things if I want to see how I did it. It's nice to have a permanent record that you can check out. So get yourself one or two of these. I think it's a great way to keep track of what you've done. Okay, this is kind of what I had in mind today. I have this rather eye-catching orange cubic zirconia that's about 8 millimeters. That's going to be in the center of it. I think I'm going to make the outside ring out of 14 gauge round, which is 1.6 millimeters. Inside ring, 16 gauge, which is 1.3 millimeters. The little radiating star segments, I think I'm going to use some 10 gauge square that I flattened a bit. It's pickling right now because I annealed it. Because I rolled it through the rolling mill, which makes it really hard. And so we'll file those into points like that. For the bezel, I'm going to use 26 gauge fine silver bezel strip, and it's 26 gauge, which is translates to 4.76 millimeters tall by 0.41 millimeters thick. 10 gauge square starts out as 2.6 millimeters in width, but I flattened it quite a bit, so I'll show it to you in a minute. Inside of the bezel, I'm going to have to create a step so the stone doesn't poke out the back, since it's got a pavilion on it, since it's faceted. The pavilion, if you're new to this, the pavilion is the pointy part on the bottom. The girdle is the midpoint of the stone, and the top is generally called a crown. So we're going to be dealing with the pavilion in a bezel, so we're going to have to build up a little platform for it to sit on. So I do it one particular way most of the time, but there's lots of ways to do it. So we're going to use some 18 gauge round wire jump rings and just stack them one on top of the other until we get it high enough. I'm probably going to put a ring. I was thinking about this as I was drawing it up. I'm probably going to put a 16 gauge round ring right up against the bezel too, so that when I solder these on, it'll rest on the same level as this ring here, which is going to be 16 gauge as well. And this one's going to be a little bit bigger, 14, so the tips of these should be able to kind of contact right there. These letters I'm going to try and make out of 18 gauge round wire probably, which is 1 millimeter. So let's make a bezel for this stone. I need to grab some bezel material. If you're new to my channel, here's some information about the solder and the torch and the flux that I use. This is a pretty good sized faceted stone. We're probably going to need 3 layers of jump rings to make it raise up. A lot of people use something flat, like I could use some of that flattened square wire if I get it thin enough to save myself doing multiple rings, but I kind of like to do it this way. It gives me some control over the height pretty well. If you're brand new to this, you might want to try doing some bezels with just regular cabochons before you jump into faceted stones. Okay, I'm going to make a mark that's just a little beyond where they meet, so I have all room to file. So I'm getting close to 30,000 subscribers now. Let's see if you know any friends who are interested in this. Let them know. Let's see if we can get to 30,000. I'm at 28,100 last I looked, or beyond that. Gotta get up to 100,000 so I get one of those YouTube plaques. Then I can fill that empty space on my wall up there. I usually make these into a more angular shape in order to solder them because I get a better solder outcome. It's nice when you have the edges going straight towards each other in a flat plane because you can just lay a piece of solder on it then, which is kind of nice. I was up late last night doing a video for my Patreon people. I think I finished around midnight. So I'm a little tired today. I guess I should have cut myself some solder, huh? You can see when you're doing a bezel, there's not very much metal there, and so it happens pretty quickly when you heat it. In fact, with beginners a lot of times, it's hard sometimes as a beginner to remember to take the heat away quickly enough once it does flow nicely because you're kind of fascinated by the whole process at that stage. So I used to have that problem anyway. I still occasionally will melt a bezel. Why don't you do about 30 bezels before you start trying to do one with a faceted stone? By 30, bezels have become sort of routine from my experience. But you don't want to feel bad about the ones you mess up on your way to get to those 30 because you can count the mess ups too. Because you always, well, at least if you stop and analyze to try and figure out what happened, it's usually a good moment to figure out something about soldering, like some of the basic things you need to do, like moving the heat around all the time, watching the solder chip for when it starts to flow, keeping the torch the right distance, and all of these things that you kind of do automatically after you've done it for a while without having to think about it. That makes it a little complicated at first. So, but the good thing is, with practice, those things become automatic. So don't give up too soon if you melt a few bezels. It happens. I mess up on the frequent anymore in various different ways. So that's pretty good. Okay, so now I need to make at least 2 rings, probably 3 rings that fit right inside of this. So that'll be our next step. Let me find some 18 gauge round. Okay, let's file this end flat. You can do this around a, like a bail making pliers or whatever. I just usually do it by hand because I've been doing it like this for so long. Does not mean you have to do it that way. Wrap it around a cylindrical object like a dapping punch or something like that. But we want it to fit snugly inside of there, so if you're doing it like this, if you overlap it that way, you can kind of hold it above it and see how close we are size-wise to fitting in there. And that's pretty close, actually. I'm going to cut it just a little bit big. And then we'll snip out pieces until it fits in there perfectly. You want it to be in there pretty snugly, so we don't have any embarrassing gaps on the bottom. That's a little big, which is what I was hoping for, so now we'll just take a little piece out. Try it again. You want it to be snug in there, but you don't want it to be so tight that it rides up on one side, because ultimately we're trying to make a flat platform for the stone to sit on. So if it's too tight and it tries to ride up all the time, you're going to end up with a problem. Yeah, there's one. Let's make another one. I always put the one that fits the snuggest at the bottom because that's the one that you'll see. The other ones will be hidden by the stone, really. Here, that one's a little bit loose, so we'll put that one on top, or in between maybe. Let's do this one on the bottom. Get them from the side so you don't see if you have any wobbles in them. You don't want them to be kind of doing that. You don't want your friends to say, "That's really pretty, Chad, but boy, your stone is really crooked." How embarrassing would that be? That looks pretty good. That'll lift it up pretty high. So the easiest way to solder these in is to set them on top of some solder. We'll flux that, and then we'll set it right on top of there. And we'll heat it from the outside just like you would a regular bezel. This is one of those ones where once it really flows, you don't want to linger for too much longer either, because the wire on the inside is sterling and it melts at a slightly lower temperature than the fine silver, which it makes at the outside of the bezel here. So it's possible to not melt the bezel, but to melt the rings on the inside. And then you end up having to start over generally. So that's no good. Don't want that. All right. Let's give a quick file up on the bottom. Get that nice, whoops, nice and neat. It's pretty good because we just want to make sure that that tip of that pavilion doesn't stick out the back. That looks pretty good. So the other thing I was going to do, like I said, is I'm going to take some of this 16 gauge round and make a ring that fits right around this for the next step maybe. So when I solder this together, I'm going to do something called pick soldering, which is where I pick up a little bit of solder and put it right where I want it when the flow temperature is reached. And that is one of those skills that I would recommend learning how to do if you want to advance in your abilities. So here's a video up here about doing that. That's one of the skills that made the biggest difference for me. Once I mastered that, I could do a lot more stuff. You just pick it up, heat it up to the soldering temperature. Put it on there and it just jumps off. The real trick is don't stick it in there until you think it's up to the soldering temperature, because then if you do, if you reach it, or if you touch it right when it reaches that temperature, it's just going to jump right onto the piece, which is what you want. Okay, that's on there tight. Let's find some solder and see if we can solder that on now, same way. Okay, that should be good. I want to make this other ring. It's going to go right around that a little bit. So let's figure out about how big a piece we need for that. Should be able to use geometry for that, yeah? So if we measure outside to outside, straight across, it's about 17 millimeters. So 17 times pi. That's 28. 5338 millimeters. Should be pretty close. So let's cut it just a little bit longer than that. What did I say? 5338? Let's cut it at 56 or something like that. 57. And we can cut it down a little bit if we need to. That's a little bigger than I said, but it's close. Good enough, I think. Okay, so now we need to make these little projecting star pieces, I think. So let's see if we can do that. This is that 10 gauge square that I rolled through the rolling. Let's figure out how long these should be. So you can make a black mark and then scratch through it to get a pretty exact line where you want to cut something. So let's use that as a guide. I'm thinking it's much easier to hold on to something and file it to a point when it's longer like this. So what if we did that right now while it's still attached? So now I'm going to take an abrasive white wheel and cup this just slightly so that it'll match up against this side a little better. And then we'll look at the size and shape and see if I like the way it came out. So I'm going to try and make 4 of those and then 4 more that are a little bit shorter, but you probably don't have to watch me do that. I'm going to measure this one and then just cut this in the next one and file it the same way. So I'll be back in a few. Okay, I got that positioned pretty carefully on the magnesia block. Magnesia block is a softer surface that you can push things into, and I wanted to get these initial star things situated the way I wanted them to. Get them as even as possible. Tucked them underneath that that ring that's on the outside edge. That was quite a bit of filing. I hope I did a reasonably neat job. That's pretty good, actually, I think. What if, on this one, should we try something different this time? If we did it like this time. Might be easier to tell if we're centered. That's not too bad. Let's see if we can get that on there now. Okay? You always want to make sure you got solid solder joints. I think it's pretty straight. It's not bad. I think I want to make that 14 gauge one. So, alright, so here's some 14. I made this little in-between mandrel on my lathe a long time ago. So let's get this pretty round. Put the solder joint right on the end of one of those, so we'll likely get a freebie out of that one. I went ahead and added some just in case. I'll have to make some little tiny letters. I used a little bit too big a piece of solder on the first part, so I'm going to refine this a little bit with the file and the saw, and I'm just going to work my way through the letters. So I did a couple of things off camera. I picked out an old bail I made for a different video to use instead of making another one because my back's starting to hurt. So I'm getting lazy. But I still like the way it looks on this one. I made the letters and I have some easy solder that is paste, and I'm going to pre-melt that onto the back of those letters. So it's where we need it to be. I feel like my N leaves something to be desired. Alright, let's give this a try. Well, let's see if they all stayed on there. Okay, I think I'm going to throw that in the pickle and get that polished, and I'll bring it back and set the stone. Okay, I reached the point where I'm ready to set the stone. I've filed it down to the right height. I do this slightly differently than some. I use the side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher. This. And then I'll use the rounded outer part of the nose of it as a burnisher. Okay. Boy, those CZs are really sparkly, aren't they? Okay, well, it's a little scaled up from what I drew, but that's okay. I changed out the bail a bit. But I kind of like that one. I think it turned out pretty nice. I give myself an A- on the piece overall, maybe a B+ on the letters, maybe a C. I don't know. I didn't do great on the letters, but the rest of it I feel like I'm pretty good about. So tell me what you think. What would you have done differently? I always love to hear other people's, the way they plan things out and execute things. So tell me your process. I'd love to hear it. So, and tell me if you like this one. All right, well, I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well, that was a pendant made to look like a compass dial with an orange cubic zirconia in it. If you enjoyed that, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button. That really helps to get my channel promoted. And I'd also love it if you'd go visit my main channel page. I have over 625 videos now. I've been doing 3 per week for over 4 years now, so there's quite a collection of content there. I think a lot of it's pretty useful, and there's definitely a whole bunch of projects there, so check it out if you like to get some ideas. I'd also love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost anything. It makes it easy to find my channel again if you want to come see some more of my videos. And you can even hit the notification bell if you want notifications when I put out a new video, which incidentally is Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I also wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. Without their help, I wouldn't be able to do this probably. So thank you to them. Thank you to the new one I have, Susan F. Thank you for signing up. I think you'll find that it's a marvelous group of people over there you can get to know. Make sure to tap into their knowledge base and maybe share some of your knowledge too. That's one of the great things about my Patreon. It's a really nice community, and I've gotten to know a lot of them. The other group are my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 28,100, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I remember when I just had 100 subscribers, so that's really amazing to me. Thank you for all the nice comments. I really do appreciate that. I love hearing how you do things. I love video suggestions. I love constructive criticism. So I'd love to hear some about your metalsmithing journey as well. So feel free to leave a comment if you'd like. And I do appreciate the financial help as well. The Buy Me a Coffees, the Super Thanks, the merch purchases, and my ebook purchases. All of that stuff makes my channel sustainable, and I couldn't do it without your help. So thank you for that. Finally, there's some links in the video description down below. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks or some other merch. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about the various tiers of membership over there. It's a really nice community, like I said. And there's a link to my newest ebook, which is a guide to 2025's tutorials. There's a page in the book for each of the videos I did last year, and there's a link to the video. There's a picture of the sketch that I drew. There's a picture of the final outcome of the project. There's a list of materials, stone information if it has a stone, difficulty rating, however subjective on my part, and some information that I put down that I thought about after the fact. Some notes I took about what went wrong, what I might do differently, what did I learn from it. I almost always learn something new when I do a project I haven't tried. And you know, just things to help you to have a more successful project. So it's a great way to have a ton of projects right at your fingertips, and a really nice way to support my channel. If you'd like, you can even get them as a package deal. I've done it for 3 years, 2023, 2024, and 2025. So you get $15 off if you buy all 3 together. So maybe consider that. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.